Given the constant news coverage of the lawless rioting in the wake of the despicable death of Mr. George Floyd, we have a front row seat to see why supporting our local law enforcement is imperative. Certainly not a popular position to take in this day and age, but we must recognize that the police play a vital role in the protection of liberty in our epic struggle to restore Americanism. We'll look at this role and how you can help in this episode of Activate America. Knowing that the first rule of Marxist takeover of a country is to divide its people and to get them to focus their attention on something other than what the communists are doing, we see what is really going on with the protests. Now, this does not mean that all protesters are in on this scheme. Most of them are being used to further an agenda that does not care about the individual protester, nor even about the type of justice that the protesters seek to accomplish. No, those in control, the organizers that have pulled all of this together, their only concern is to see revolution. And revolution demands the removal of authority that is not doing the communist bidding. This is why the police are targets. They represent the law and order that communists are against. The police are to enforce constitutional laws created in pursuance of the Constitution by legislators. If a law falls outside of this scope, then they are duty-bound to nullify that law. If police are locally accountable to those communities they serve and do not have any entangling alliances with the federal government or even international agencies, then the police are an integral partner in enforcing the law and order that their community has set forth. It's when the police are not accountable to the local communities that there then are problems, because allegiances can become skewed. Unfortunately, radical leftists have infected the system they are so bent on ripping down that many are in positions of power today within the police department or within the local government agencies that help to hold police accountable. These leftist leaders erode the local government support of the police so that the system favors the criminal. This is why police are being told to stand down, to abandon their precincts, to not fight back, to not use the proper techniques for riot control. As criminals overwhelm the police in these riots, the local communities only have their elected officials and the local voters to blame. In fact, after years of listening to criminal advocates, the Minneapolis City Council is seriously considering disbanding the police department. CityPages.com reports that instead of hiring much more needed officers, more than $1 million was transferred from the 2019 Minneapolis police budget to what they call community-driven public safety programs. Those behind it say the city could live better with less of a police presence. Well, they got their wish, didn't they? At a time when more officers are needed, they aren't available. And now the inept leadership is doubling down, pointing to the police as the problem. CNN reported that Governor Tim Walz estimated that 80% of the protesters in the Minneapolis area were from out of town. Therefore, the funding for the community-driven public safety programs has done zero good for help in controlling the rioting. The only way to do this is with a physical police presence. Minneapolis and many police departments across the country are being used in a leftist game of political correctness that will see the accelerated demise of law and order in their area. But this is all according to plan for the hardcore revolutionaries. They want police viewed as the aggressors, as agents of the state, because again, police stand in the way of communist control. Yet the current image of the police is no longer the Norman Rockwell painting of a fellow citizen looking to serve his community. Rather, it's a militarized soldier looking more ready to do battle than to be a peacekeeper. For this, we can thank the encroachment of the federal government into local law enforcement, which accelerated in a post-9/11 world, as intelligence responsibilities were taken over by the feds. This has led to more harm than good regarding our rights, especially in the way of privacy, due process, and the infringement of the federal government onto states, the people. The militarization of police followed with grants, training, equipment, vehicles, and other resources coming from the federal government, including fusion centers that are nothing more than an entangling alliance of local, state, and federal police agencies to gather and disseminate intelligence. Over the last few decades, and pushed forward rapidly during these last few years, police have come under attack from all angles. Due to the conditions in which they are forced to work, many good cops have left, resulting in a shortage of qualified candidates. Many locations have had to lower their qualification standards in order to fill their ranks. Plus, many are finding little to no support from the very prosecutors and judges that they are reliant upon to punish those that are guilty. A very recent example comes from the Epoch Times. The Epoch Times reports that Missouri Attorney General Eric Schmidt said that St. Louis Circuit Attorney Kim Gardner has not charged any people who were arrested for rioting, looting, and vandalism during recent protests over the death of George Floyd. To see that kind of level of violence and rioting that went on, police officers being shot and shot at, a retired police captain being murdered, people throwing rocks and gasoline and frozen water bottles at police officers, firefighters being assaulted and blocked from doing their job, businesses that have served the community for years being burned to the ground, it's unfathomable that every single person arrested that night has been released, he said in a statement, according to KSDK. What consequences are there when criminals are allowed to go free? This sends quite the message to the criminal element as well as to the police and the local communities. These hardcore leftists will use every opportunity to break down authority and eventually law and order to see their revolution come to fruition. This is why we must support your local police and keep them independent. However, this is not a blind support. Where bad cops exist, ensure that the system is working so that it removes these bad cops and punishes their actions. In the case of Mr. Floyd, he obviously died in police custody. It has been deemed a homicide and arrests have been made and trials will occur to determine guilt. The judicial system appears to be working. So what can we do? We can work to educate those that oversee the police and their budget to recognize the benefits of staying independent from the federal government, to see that strings come attached to federal aid and that the police allegiance to the local community can be put into jeopardy with every grant, piece of equipment, or training accepted from the federal government. Help them to see their vital role in keeping police accountable, as well as staying clear of civilian review boards, which are usually proposed and staffed by radical leftists in hopes of neutering the police, overriding local elected officials, and thus causing crime to escalate. The John Birch Society has covered this war on police for decades. Watch our video, Local Police versus National Police, to learn more and then share it with others. We also have plenty of other materials you can use to show your support at the Support Your Local Police Action Tool page. If you don't already have a Support Your Local Police committee, then please consider pulling one together by exposing the communist roots of these riots and work to regain control of a hallmark of our republic, our local law enforcement. Links are in the description. As complicated as this situation seems to be, we can boil it down to either choosing freedom or chaos. Which will it be? Until next time, this is Bill Hahn for the John Birch Society saying stay active, everyone.